Avengers Endgame is directed by Anthony and Joe Russo and is the 22nd installment into the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It picks up about 3 weeks after the events of Avengers Infinity War, following the moment where Thanos used the Infinity Stones to wipe out half the life in the universe. We find our heroes scattered and devastated, trying to get a grasp on the horrific events that have just transpired in their lives.
This film is huge in every way you can think of, and because of that, I brought my friend Dylan along, and he's going to be reviewing it with me. So yeah, Anthony and Joe Russo. I know them from Community and Arrested Development when they directed those, and I like it when people who started in comedy go off to do all these other things, like the way that Jordan Peele right now is, he started in comedy, and then now he's going off and doing horror that were probably his real passion projects this whole time. And I feel like with Anthony and Joe Russo, it's no different. So they've been doing 4 movies now in the MCU, and not a lot of directors can say that. They usually go from director to director with the Marvel films. So
Do Jon Favreau dirty like that.
right. But going back to the Russo brothers, yeah, it just speaks volumes, the fact that they kind of became like the head runner of where the movies were going.
Yeah, absolutely. And like what you were saying, it's certainly not a new thing for, directors and actors and writers to kind of not grow out of comedy, but just move away from comedy to develop, comic book films, heavy dramas, action films. Yeah, especially this last decade or so, people are just breaking the molds that they've been set in by their previous careers.
So this movie has a huge cast, as everybody knows, and we're probably just gonna stick to the cast at the very beginning. More notably, I guess the cast that pops up on when you look at the poster. So
if you see them in the cardboard cutout at the mall, we're gonna talk about them.
Yeah, pretty much. We're gonna talk about those people. Let's start with the main guy. Let's start with Iron Man.
Yeah.
Considering this is my first MCU film to review, I might as well bring up all the things I appreciate about these actors, thus far. With Robert Downey Jr., I felt like ever since the first movie, I've been convinced that he is Iron Man, and I think he's done such a great job over the past decade of playing this character. You can tell it's just second nature for him. This movie is very much a conclusion for many aspects, and I thought that a lot of these characters, including Robert Downey Jr., did phenomenal with the work they were given.
He just put so much of himself into this character. He put so much of the character into him almost at times. You just believed every moment that he was on screen. For every of the 7, 8 films he's been in, even including cameos, you believed every minute he's on screen that this is Iron Man.
So Chris Evans as Captain America. Yeah, just like Robert Downey Jr., he's at a point now in his career as this character where it's, again, second nature to him. Once Winter Soldier came around, he was pretty much my favorite Avenger. He did a good job at giving off this broken man, but at the same time trying to help everybody else who feels the way that he does.
Watching the story of this war hero with these optimistic 40s idealism face the realities of the 21st century and the failings of our modern world, and even the brighter parts of our modern world that just don't quite live up to what the American dream used to be. Political.
No.
But just watching him face these new grim realities that he is stuck with through no fault of his own, it just created that much more of a compelling story. A lot of that goes towards great writing, but it can't be denied that without a solid performance from Chris Evans, it still could have just been flat, but it absolutely was not.
Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk definitely brought something new to this Hulk. The story of the movie is, what, 3 weeks or something
3
like
weeks.
that? But there are a few time jumps in the movie. And yeah, after one of the time jumps, the Hulk is like a very different character. Bruce is a very different character. Nothing that we've seen before. To any of you who haven't seen the movie yet, with what they do, I don't know if everybody's going to be satisfied with it.
I'm completely happy with who Bruce Banner was in this movie. I just wish we could have watched his journey there.
And I noticed that's a common thing in the movie, is the fact that not just his character, but a bunch of characters in the writing of the movie, they burn a lot of bridges. I say burn bridge, and that might sound negative, but all the ways they go about with all these characters, it's not necessarily bad things. It's just that because it's such a specific route they go, it just might not be for everybody. Like, I can already see it now. It's not going to be satisfying to some viewers, especially with this coming off the cusp of Infinity War. This movie is very different. Scarlett Johansson as, Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow. I thought she did good in this movie. I really like what she brought to the performance.
Yeah, there's a vulnerability that we've just never seen before from her.
Yeah, a huge vulnerability. And it really adds to her character arc. And just, that character has gone such a long way since Iron Man 2. Like, she was so, like, one-dimensional and, like, quiet, prop-like. But in this movie, you just see, like, how much this character has changed. And for the better, too. Yeah. Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye, I thought that was also really good in the fact of similar matters. He's very vulnerable, and you didn't see him in Infinity War, but they show where he was at and, what was going on with him, and you see how drastically it affects him.
One of the best opening scenes to, I guess this is just a superhero film. He has one of the best openings to a superhero film. It's very easy to tell that the Russos have been paying attention to the fact that a lot of people find Hawkeye useless. You can tell they really sat down and were like, what can we give Hawkeye to actually make him, helpful?
Let's go into Chris Hemsworth now. This character definitely brought something new that wasn't in the, other movies.
Changes.
Yeah, at the very beginning, it's what you'd expect him to be like, considering what just happened in Infinity War. But for, like, the duration of the film is what I mean. The writers went another route with this character as well. Definitely something new brought to the table, and it's another thing where I don't really know if it would change.
In spite of all that, he still had a very compelling character arc. He was still very much comic relief, but you never didn't feel for him at the same time.
Ant-Man, who's played by Paul Rudd. I really liked what he brought to the table in comparison to the other Avengers, because Ant-Man isn't my favorite, but Scott Lang is.
He's such a dad.
Yeah, he's like the character that's like, what the hell? But that character happens to also be a superhero too. I just really like that addition to all the other characters that happen to be in the MCU. It's like a really refreshing thing to bring.
The specific part he was given to play, I absolutely did not expect it. Not necessarily from Paul Rudd, but just from the
character,
the writer, the character, yeah.
Yeah, where they're at that point in the movie, like all the other characters that aren't Ant-Man, everybody's really down. At this point, there's like no hope in the world. And then when he comes into the picture, he's like the spark of hope. He might be able to do something. He might be able to help somehow. I didn't expect that to happen. I thought he was just gonna pop up, and then it's like, oh, let's get started. But it's like the way they went about it was nice.
Yeah, honestly, the character dynamics you're probably expecting going into the movie are, honestly, I think just going to be totally subverted. Certain characters are a lot more significant than others that you would expect to be, a lead role.
Characters you'd consider to be side characters in comparison to the Avengers or anybody else who's considered a main character who have like such big roles in this movie. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
That they went in this approach. On the subject of a character who I also feel like stepped forward and played a huge part more than they did in the previous film, I'd say Nebula, who was played by Karen Gillan.
Holy crap, she killed it.
Yeah, I really liked her in this movie.
You get this moment in the third act of the film where you just face this full arc that Nebula has gone through ever since the first Guardians of the Galaxy. You just face it in its completion, what's come of it, how much he's changed, and it's really one of the more grabbing dialogue scenes in the movie.
Going on to Captain Marvel now, which is played by Brie Larson. I didn't get to review Captain Marvel, the other movie that came out right before this one. I'd have to say in that movie, either she or the director or the writer, whoever was involved, I felt like they didn't really know how to approach the character. She didn't really have a consistent personality to her. And because of that, it was like hard for me to like kind of get behind her.
Yeah, the movie definitely suffered for it, unfortunately.
Yeah, with that film, it was because of the constrictions of the fact that it was supposed to be around like the Phase 1 times, maybe even earlier than Phase 1.
Yeah.
And because of that, I felt like there was all these restrictions, not only for where to go with the story, but also how to write the characters. I feel like all that very much fades away when it comes to this character in this film. I thought that they used her screen time very tastefully. I thought that she was going to be in your face the whole time. I thought she was going to be like the savior or something.
I'm here to save the day.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the way that they use her, it's very organic and it makes sense. And, you know, with what she's capable of doing, they make great use of it. Yeah, I think that the Russo brothers and everybody involved managed to use her better than she was used
in her own
in
movie.
her own film.
On the off chance Captain Marvel was your favorite movie of all time,
Sorry.
I will say be prepared for the fact that she is just not in this movie a whole lot. I'd say she was on screen for a total of 20 minutes, maybe. At most
15 to 20.
Yeah, I don't know if that was scheduling conflicts with Brie Larson or they just didn't know how to squeeze her into the script in an organic way. Both of those answers make sense to me personally.
We go to Don Cheadle yet?
We did not go to Don Cheadle yet.
Don
Cheadle was there.
Yeah, he was War Machine.
He absolutely was in the movie.
All right, going on to Rocket Raccoon.
The fact is, in all of his movies so far, War Machine has never been in the spotlight unless it was for like a dialogue joke. And that's not any different in this movie. He still, kicked ass as War Machine. If that's what you wanted to see, you're going to see it. But if you're going to like list off all the best scenes in the movie, chances are you won't mention Don Cheadle. It's not his fault. It's just he wasn't in the movie that much.
Yeah, I'd say in comparison to his other appearances, he's not overutilized and he's not underutilized.
Yeah.
He's just utilized.
He's definitely there.
And I feel like if he appears in other films, then it's like maybe this is a step in the right direction for him. I like the way that he's being used in this movie because in this movie and in Infinity War, it is all hands on deck, literally, for like all the characters. So going on to Rocket Raccoon, played by Bradley Cooper, I kind of feel like he's tamed in this film.
Yeah, he's tame, and with good reason. He just watched his whole family die.
It's within good reason. He's not exactly happy right now.
And that being said, he does have one specific scene in the second act where he kind of sits a character down and, spits reality at them in a very Rocket way.
Who is he? Like, who is Josh Brolin? There was no villain in this movie. No.
It was like a lighthearted romp,
Yeah.
I think he was like an extra in Deadpool or something.
It was something like that. I don't know. Josh Brolin, again, playing Thanos. I thought it was a strong character again. And not only did he manage, but the directors managed to present like a new take on the character. He definitely has just as much character as he has in Infinity War, but in Infinity War he kind of gives off this persona of, I don't want to hurt people, this is just the greater cause. And in this movie it's like that Thanos that from the comics, you kind of see a little bit of that come out.
Yeah, one of my absolute favorite things that they did with Thanos in this movie was, after Infinity War, the way Infinity War went, one of the biggest debates regarding that movie was the morality of Thanos. Was he an evil character? Was he a good character with just, twisted morals? By the time this movie's done, there is a definitive answer to that question.
One thing that I was going to mention about the writing, and I kind of feel like it goes hand in hand with the cinematography, which sounds weird to say. What I mean by this is like the stuff they say, the stuff they do, going hand in hand with the way the cinematography is. It literally feels like a comic book movie. I get it, it's a comic book movie, but I mean, like, it feels like a comic movie in the aspect of I could see these being on panels.
Sure.
And I could see the stuff that they're saying being on the panels too in a comic book.
Writing this many characters into a script is not easy. It wasn't easy in Infinity War. It definitely wasn't easy in Endgame. Once again, they managed to make a cohesive story with X many characters, and nobody really felt too left out or too shown off. Not everybody had equal screen time, obviously. That's just not going to happen. They follow the various subplots in the film cohesively. The flow was great. The pacing was great.
Cinematography was really good in this film.
Cinematography was incredible.
It's kind of like how Ragnarok managed to do that with a lot of scenes where it looks like it's like a painting or something.
Mm-hmm.
This cinematography in this film does a lot of that.
I have to give so much credit to Trent Opalak. I hope I pronounced his last name correctly as the DP of this movie. He was also the cinematographer for the past few Avengers films, Age of Ultron, Infinity War. He also did Winter Soldier and Civil War. He's also the same cinematographer who did District 9, Chappie, and Elysium. Apart from District 9 just being one of my favorite movies, I just think the cinematography in each of those films is just breathtaking. He really takes his time to let each, or at least as many shots as possible, just define the scene and the tone that's being set at the moment.
Do you have any issues about the movie? Because, like, we mentioned what could be a potential issue for somebody else, pacing in the beginning of the movie. I can see that being an issue for somebody, but me personally, movies are slow-paced sometimes, and it's not like nothing happens. To me, this movie is very full. It is chock full.
Absolutely.
It is a buff film.
Absolutely.
There's a lot that happens at all times, and it's not like empty calories of scenes. You get something out of everything that's happening in the movie.
Yeah, there's a balance of action and character moments, but just some people prefer one over the other.
Yeah, so to me, slow pace is a nitpicky thing and not necessarily an issue of the film.
One issue I have, and let's be honest, you can poke holes in any movie if you sit there long enough, but you know, there are the occasional very, again, nitpicky things you can point out. This isn't really a spoiler, but it is a scene in the movie. There's a part where Rhodey is under a collapsing building. You see that he is not in a suit. The next time you see him, he's in a suit that he was not wearing at all prior to that moment. You didn't see that suit where he was. Me, you know, just being a dick, I'm sitting there wondering, like, where'd that suit come from? What?
That's what speaks volumes to me about a movie being good, is the fact that you literally have to try hard to search for an issue with the movie. This movie is a perfect example of that, where right now we are sitting here trying to think of an issue that we have with this film, but it's really hard to find one.
But of course, that's subjective, you know. I think this movie's fantastic. Someone watching this probably thinks that one of my favorite movies is garbage, and if you didn't like this movie, that's just because you have an opinion. So what? That's fine.
There's a big death in this movie, like a major death. We all kind of knew this going in, so that in itself is not a spoiler. Like, we know someone is going to die in this movie.
But you don't need two hands to count the deaths or anything like that.
Yeah. That's one thing I was worried about with going into this, is I knew it was going to happen. I just didn't know who. And when it finally happened, yeah, the way they went about it was very dramatic, very respectful, and they definitely left time for that scene to breathe. Just to go with that, there are characters at the end where there's nothing flat out saying character is never coming back again, but with how the story went, if they didn't come back again, you would understand why they didn't. Obviously, they're going to be making MCU films. They're going to keep making films. The Spider-Man movie is coming out, so they're not going to plan on stopping. But at the same time, this movie very much is a conclusion to things that have happened thus far.
I don't remember if it was Kevin Feige or one of the Russos, but it was promised that this movie, back when it was called Infinity Wars Part 2, was not going to be the end of the MCU, but it was going to be the end of the MCU as we know it. And I think when you see this movie through, you'll understand exactly what that means.
So with all that said, I'm going to give Avengers Endgame an A.
And I'm going to go ahead and give Avengers Endgame an A-.
Dylan, thanks for being in this review with me. And, thank you ahead of time, because you're going to be in the spoiler review for me too.
No problem.
So those are our thoughts on Avengers Endgame. If you have seen the movie yourself, maybe have some views on where you think the MCU is going to go, just put it in the comments below. Subscribe if you liked the video, and thanks for watching.